So where we are picking up tonight is pretty much where we left off last time. This is the end of the day and you're all off duty. You remember we did the roll to see how you were all going to relieve stress. And I have to tell you, I'm putting you all in stressful situations depending on how well you rolled. So sorry, Scotty. We are actually going to start with Kaluna. I believe Kaluna, you and your sister were going to the Red Nebula. So we'll start with actually you meeting her just outside of the club. And as you're approaching, you see Kaluna standing outside. There's actually a large crowd of people that are waiting to move their way in. And you're outside of the Esplanade because that's where the Red Nebula is. It's actually built off of the perimeter of the Esplanade with like the other shops and stuff. But the holographic projector in the dome of the Esplanade is changed to reveal like stars and to try to express that it's nighttime on the station. But as you kind of get a good glance of her before she's noticed you, and she's actually dressed a little more professionally, I guess, than you've seen Kaluna in the past. She's wearing a very plain, almost classical Romulan attire where it's like the plain, like angled shirt and everything.
Real quick, I think you mixed up the sister names. I'm Kaluna.
Oh,
the
sorry,
sister's
Aspen.
the other one.
Aspen, sorry.
There you
I
go.
was
Now
thinking
you're
Kaluna.
fine.
Yeah, you see Aspen. Aspen is wearing those plain, like Romulan style clothing.
So, I think Kaluna kind of walks up and she, was expecting, a club night. So she's wearing, interesting dress, but she kind of stops as she sees her sister and kind of walks over and says, everything all right? You don't exactly look like you're in the mood for a club right now.
And she kind of smiles and she says, hey, Kaluna, yeah, I was hoping we could find somewhere inside to talk.
Well, I know a few booths that are a little bit more private than others.
Sure, why don't we start there and just see where things go?
Sure. So yeah, guess we go inside and I try to find a booth that's out of the way and otherwise won't really be eavesdrop. But in a club like this, I imagine between the music and the people, it's not like anybody's going to listen in to begin with. But
yeah, and the Red Nebula this is kind of always the situation here, but it's actually very busy. The music's playing very loudly. There's lots of people on the dance floor down in the bottom dance area. But as the two of you walk around the perimeter past the bar, you do get to a section, like a race section, where there are several booths that are, fairly isolated. It's a bit quieter in these booths. Somehow they've managed to work that out acoustically to where you could actually sit there and have a conversation without yelling at each other.
all right, well. Once we have our booth and we've ordered drinks or food or whatever it is we're ordering, I just sort of cross my arms and go, all right, so where do you want to begin? Or should I be the one asking questions here?
And Kaluna says, just a moment. And she reaches into like a little satchel that she's wearing across her chest. And she removes a device about the size of a pin and she twists it into two pieces. She puts one piece on your side of the booth and then she puts one piece on her side and she presses a button. And you notice that you've seen devices like this before. It's a signal jammer to make sure that no one can electronically like eavesdrop on your conversation.
And as Aspen does this, I think, I kind of raise my eyebrow at that and go, well, if you were going to go to this lengths, maybe we should have met a little bit somewhere a little bit more private. But why all the subterfuge?
She says, actually, blending in with everyone is exactly the best thing right now. And she reaches into her satchel and she pulls out a pad and she passes it across the table to you. And on the pad is basically a population study, it looks like. And you see it's a graph that starts up in the top left and gradually drops down to the top right, or down to the bottom right, sorry. And she says, I came here for a number of reasons, Kaluna, but the chief reason is this study, which I don't know that you've seen before, but it's very important to every Romulan. And as you glance at the study, you see it's something that a Romulan doctor put together. He did a study on population figures of Romulans, and this is based on current rate of procreation based on the known Romulan population. And according to this doctor's calculations, in less than 600 years, which is about 3 generations in Romulan lifespan, the Romulan people will become extinct.
Take a look at that and, narrow my eyes and maybe read it once or twice, maybe a third time even. And, huh. And you're sure about this?
And as you're flipping through the pages of the study, you notice that he's hypothesizing that there are only a fixed number of Romulans based on basically what people know. So there's, to recap where we are in this current timeline, there was the Dominion War, which the Romulans lost a lot of people in that. There was the whole Shinzo Revolution, with the Remans taking over the Senate and everything, and there was basically a small civil war where lots of Romulans died there. Then there was the whole thing with Hobus, which wiped out the Romulus system and, of course, the home planet, and then Remus as well. And then the Romulans were conquered by the Klingons. They were subjugated for a number of years, and only a small section of Romulans managed to escape into Federation territory. So that's the small segment of population that this doctor is using and taking into account all of those events. And I'm also taking a little liberty here, assuming that Romulans don't procreate very often. Otherwise, there would be Romulans everywhere if they lived to be 200 years old. So I'm assuming they only, like Vulcans, have maybe 1 or 2 kids in their lifetime.
Right. So as I review all this again, and I finally reach the end, and I put it down, and I go, all right, well, I mean, that's not the most beneficial or good news, but I would simply say that doesn't explain why you came all the way out here just to tell me this.
She kind of leans back. Yeah, right to the point, aren't you? Well, I came here to talk about what could be our new home. You're familiar with the Romulan colony on Regulus 1 in the Algernon system, aren't you? To fill you in, this is from season 2.
I recall it, yeah. Yeah. Yes, I'm aware of it, yes. What about it?
Well, in the next few weeks, that Romulan colony is actually going to declare independence from the Federation and announce itself as the first Romulan Republic.
I look at the data pad again. Now, why would they do that? That would seem counterproductive.
Well, of course, Romulan sovereignty is not something that we take for granted, that we take lightly. I don't know if you followed the situation on Regulus 1, but we're tired of being ignored by not only the Federation, but the other forces in the quadrant. We need a home, as what this study shows, but also we deserve a home.
Okay, I mean, I'm following you so far, but I'm not seeing the link as why you would spend weeks, if not months, coming out here. Are you planning on moving the colony out this far? Or are you asking me to come back and do something? You need to be a little bit more clear with me, sis, because right now you're driving towards something that I'm not able to grasp.
And at this point, the server comes over with your drinks, and I don't know what you ordered, but Aspen ordered a Romulan ale.
I think I ordered something purple.
So she kind of raises an eyebrow at your purple drink, and she takes a sip of her ale, and she waits for the server to walk away. And she says, Kaluna, we're getting there. This, to understand what I'm going to ask you, you need to understand what's at stake.
I just sort of motioned for her to continue.
She says, not only are we talking about the future of the Romulan people, we're also talking about home. We haven't had a home in a very long time. Now, you may not want to go to our new home world when it's declared that way, but it would always be a place for you to return to if you need to or if you want to. Not only is it the death of the Romulan people, but it's also the death of Romulan culture. With the loss of Ambassador Spock, reunification has pretty much died on the vine as well. This colony has gone pretty far. We've actually elected our first chancellor.
All right.
You probably...
Again,
You probably know of her, and you may be able to see where this is going. Her name is Varen. And also, Varen was the lady in season 1 of the Hope, who we thought died on her warbird when the Hope attacked her, but apparently she survived.
Mm-hmm.
But you know Kaluna, you know Varen. She's kind of a war hero amongst the Romulan folks for her campaign that she ran against the Klingons behind, lines and everything. But you also know, this jumps your attention, she's wanted by the Federation for various war crimes, like creating that toxin that did terrible things to the Klingons, and then also the intention to possibly use that on Federation colonies. Yeah, she's wanted.
So, at this point, I think my eyes narrow a little bit more than usual. And, maybe I get a little bit more serious in tone, and I simply say, if I just heard you correctly, you've elected a terrorist to lead you.
And she says, no, the Romulan people of the new Romulan Republic have elected a war hero as their first leader. She was elected, and it wasn't the sham election like there used to be in the Romulan Senate. This was a true election, a majority vote by the people of the colony.
That still doesn't excuse the actions that they took during this. War hero? No, if anything, they are war criminal.
Come on, Kaluna, you're not so naive. I mean, one person's terrorist is another person's hero. It's all a matter of who wins.
And that is why you and I have never really gotten along that well. You're too much of an idealist. You don't understand that there are actual things such as objectivism. You're too subjective, as per usual. And if you're asking me to throw my lot in with this terrorist, with whatever the hell you want to call your faction, I'll just tell you this straight up front. You wasted your time coming out here.
While I don't necessarily agree with all of Varen's methods, I do agree that she's the strong leader that we need to get started. And, based on our charter, if you don't like her, when 4 years pass and the election starts again, you can vote her out of office. That's the beauty of our new system. It is a republic, a true republic, not in name only.
I think I just slide the pad back over to her, take a sip of my drink, and set it down and go, if there's nothing else, I believe I have some important business to catch up on. You may, of course, stay in the station as long as you wish. It's not as if I can kick you off station, but until you get your head out of your ass, I don't really want to see you again.
And she says, Kaluna, that's not really why I came here. I didn't come here to tell you about the Republic. I didn't even come here to invite you. I came to ask for your help. Now, ever since we were kids, you've always been there for me when I've needed help. But this time, I really need your help.
Let me guess. You owe a lot of bars of latinum. Again.
No. Actually, more than that, I've promised that I can do something. And I may have overstepped my abilities, but it's something you can do.
You're about to ask me to steal something or give you supplies.
No,
Clearly, you go ahead.
nothing like that. And she reaches into her pouch again and she pulls out a vial and she passes it across the table. She does this in a way so that it's kind of in her palm, so anyone that was looking at the booth wouldn't actually see the vial. Like her hand is hiding it, but you on yours, you can see it because it's like she's sliding it across to you in that way. Mm-hmm. But she says, there's a problem with the colony. We know that when the Federation figure out that Varen is the Chancellor, there will be a problem. They may try to arrest her, and that could undo everything that we've tried to create. The starship Aurora is the patrol vessel in the Algeron sector. She would be the first vessel to respond once the announcement is made. Well, What I'm asking for you to do, she looks at the vial and she looks up at you and she says, this is Dorvoxin. And before she continues, you immediately remember what Dorvoxin is. It's a compound created by the Tal Shiar in interrogations and used almost exclusively on Romulans, but sometimes on other species. It's like a truth serum, but it's even more powerful because when the person comes out of it, they don't remember the situation at all. Highly illegal. How she got on the station, you have no idea. But she says, I have been led to understand that you have a beginning of a relationship with the Commodore. I need you to get the prefix codes of the USS Aurora. Now, before you say anything, we don't mean to harm the ship or its crew. It's just a backup if the Federation decides they're not going to recognize our government.
I think at this, after a moment of purposeful silence passes, I think I'm just going to push the vial back towards her, stand up and go, I've changed my mind. You have 2 hours to get off of this station. If you're still on the station at that point, expect to have station security on your head.
She kind of nods and she says, okay, just answer one last question for me. Why do you have such loyalty to these people and not your own people?
I don't have loyalty to anyone. What I do have is integrity, and I'm not about to help a terrorist by violating the security of a place I work at. You're asking me to violate doctor-patient confidentiality to manipulate the Commodore to get your prefix codes. It's not going to happen. I'm not that kind of doctor. I'm not that kind of therapist. And if anything, I think this cements why Father decided to take you in the divorce and not me. And I think I finish my drink, slam it down, stand up and go, you're a lot like him. And I think that's why I really, really don't like you anymore. And then I just walk off. And then I don't even let her get a word in. I just walk off.
Ouch. As you walk away, Cluna, we're actually going to transition to Boomy. So, Boomy, I think you said that after your shift, you were going to go to your quarters where Mina was,
Yep.
and you were going to prepare dinner.
Indeed, I was.
So, first of all, what were you going to prepare?
Oh, probably a mixed type meal. Knowing that she's Bajoran, I'd have the computer help with some Bajoran dishes, but also introduce some Yulian dishes as well.
Well, when you make it to your quarters, you walk in, and in this graphic, we have like the living area of your quarters. I would imagine the station quarters are quite a bit larger than what you'd find in a starship. You probably have like a living room, a bedroom, and then like a study, and then a bathroom, and all of that. And as you come in, you see Mina. Her full name is Vezin Mina, but of course, as a Bajoran, her first name is Mina. She's actually sitting on it's like a couch here in the corner, and she's staring out the window into space, and you can see the station is aligned in such a way where you can see the blue planet Spinel, which the station orbits, but she's watching the planet, and she doesn't turn to look at you.
Hello, Mina. How you doing today?
She kind of turns to you, and she looks kind of angry almost, and she says, "Where's Papa?"
Your father got in trouble. Just sit down. You know when you got sick?
And she just sort of stares at you and blinks.
Remember when we first met in medical bay?
She says, "Yes, I remember."
Well, you got sick because of something you found. Something that your father had. And he got in trouble because.
And she says, "Papa always said that we have to stick together and look out for each other."
Well, I'm looking out for your father. He's going to get the help he needs. And in the meantime, I'm looking after you for him. But if you want to see him, I'll talk with the commander of the station and have that set up. Does that sound okay?
She looks at you and she makes a fist and she says, I want to see Papa now.
I'll see what I can do.
And
But
she turns and looks out the window.
have you eaten anything today?
And she doesn't turn.
He'll just get up and go to his quarter, his room, and see if he can send a message to the captain of the station.
So when you make a call to the Commodore's office, I'd say it makes it to the Commodore's yeoman. Let's actually say it's Delphia. And she responds, yes, doctor. Can I help you?
Yes, I'd like permission to visit engineering individual that's in the brig right now. As a character, as a player, I'm forgetting his name.
His name is Vezin Antos.
If I could be permitted to see Vezin Antos along with his daughter. She misses him.
Delphia says, well, you can visit someone in the brig, I'm assuming, unless they're under maximum security. I don't know if that's the place to take a kid, but you're under no restrictions to do that.
Is it possible we could meet in a nicer setting, probably some quarters guarded? We can visit there so it's not quite as depressing to take a kid to.
She says, I can pass that along to the Commodore, but honestly, that's probably under the purview of Chief Risu.
Well, could direct me. Very much appreciated. She misses her father.
She says, okay, one moment. And then I imagine she does some sort of coordination. And then you hear, Risu is here.
Wait, I met him before, haven't I?
Yeah, he's the Afrosian with the 3 arms who showed up in Ward 7 and actually arrested Antos on the spot there. So yeah, you know Risu.
Good afternoon. It is Dr. Boomy.
Ah, Risu is very happy to speak with you, Doctor. What can Risu do for you?
I was hoping to arrange a visitation between Antos and his daughter. Preferably not in the brig, but somewhere that's just as secure, but not as depressing or traumatizing to a child.
And Risu, the line is quiet for a minute, and Risu says, Doctor, Risu does not believe that Antos would be good to visit currently. Risu would remind the doctor that Antos is recovering from a hush addiction.
Surely there's some... And how long does a recovery usually take for this?
And Risu says, well, in this case, the lieutenant's addiction was quite severe. Apparently, he had been using the narcotic for quite a while. I am told that he should recover in a few days to a few weeks. Risu is also using, shamefully, Risu is using the lack of visitation from Mina as a tool to drive Antos's cooperation.
I think that if he has been cooperating, though, he should be given some leeway to see his own daughter. And she is also requesting to see him as well. She misses him. It is not good to keep parents separated from their child for too long. and vice versa. It can be traumatic and scarring.
Risu agrees, but as of yet, Antos has not given up the name of his dealer.
Understood. I will see what I can do on my end here.
Risu thanks you.
Good night.
And he cuts the comm.
He just sits there for a second, just like tapping his hands on his legs as he's trying to think, and just stand up and walk back to the living room. He's like, Mina, your father and you, I assume you both are very honest with each other, right?
She looks up at you and she says, yes, Papa looks after me.
And Papa never tells you any lies or anything, that he tells you the truth?
She says, no, friends don't lie to each other.
He'll sit down. He's like, well, I want to be a friend to you, and I hope I am a friend of your father's. Your father's sick. He's getting better, but it's going to take some time. He's not well enough to see anyone, really, aside from a few medical individuals. He's recovering from what made you sick. Unfortunately, he had a lot more of it in his system than you did. Do you understand?
She kind of nods. And she says,
But
do you believe in the prophets?
I believe in a higher power. If it's the prophets or my own beliefs or even what the Klingons believe in, I believe that there is something out there that helps and guides us.
And she says, is Papa going to go to the prophets?
Not for some time. I'll make sure that he comes back to you and that he will be with you for a long time before he goes to the prophets. You just hold out a hand like, here. Everything is going to be okay. I'll make sure to check in on him as well. And make sure that he's getting the best treatment he can get.
And she gets up off the couch and she walks over. She doesn't take your hand though, but she continues on to the replicator and she says, does your replicator make ice cream?
It should. I have a favorite for Rocky Road.
I've never had Rocky Road.
Quite delicious.
She says, Papa's favorite is vanilla with chocolate chip.
That's a good one too. I had a little grandson. He likes something called chocolate chip mint. Green, with chocolate chips in it. Tasty as well.
She kind of is waiting for you by the replicator and she waits for a moment and then she says to the replicator to make her an extra large bowl of Rocky Road ice cream. And the replicator makes it. And it's a ginormous bowl of like several scoops, like maybe 12 scoops of Rocky Road.
Maybe we'll get up and take it from the replicator.
And she's kind of watching it intently.
I'm like, well, let's go have some here. You ever had something called an ice cream cone?
Of course I've had an ice cream cone. I'm not a baby.
Okay, making sure. Some people don't like them. Computer, replicate several waffle chocolate dip cones.
And then just a moment passes and the cones materialize.
It's like, just for today, we'll have some ice cream. Okay, but we'll have regular food later, okay? Promise?
And then we'll go see Papa.
He'll smile. He's like, do you want to see a trick I can do?
She says, "Is it funny?"
Can be. My people have a gift. We're able to relive a memory. We can also make other people relive a memory if they want to as well. Is there such a memory for you with your papa? Something that you want to remember again?
I remember when Mama and Papa on Bejor, we went on a trip.
Now, why don't you tell me about it?
As she starts to tell you, we're actually going to transition over to the Esplanade to where Dial is. As I said before, they've changed the holographics at the top of the Esplanade to make it appear as if it's night and you can see the sparkling stars. But I think, Dial, you said you were going to go for a walk after your shift.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go for a long walk around the Esplanade. I'm assuming there's quite a lot of like kind of trail things going through.
Yeah, there's a trail, and I think we also decided that there's like a small lake at
Yeah, the
some point.
center lake. So yeah, I'll make my way around. I might stop and sit by the lake just because.
As you take a spot in one of the benches by the lake, you notice just down from you is Var Aaron, the Telfi doctor who helped you before. She's sitting there alone. She's staring at the water, and she's actually crying.
I'll leave a minute, kind of notice it, and just go, okay, and stand up and walk over to her. Is everything all right?
She looks up at you and she wipes the tears away from her eyes, and she says, "Oh, hello, doctor, right?"
Yes, I'm Dr. Dial.
She says, "Forgive me, I don't understand all the different ranks that your people have. I'm sorry. Would you like to sit?"
I'll take a seat next to her. What's on your mind?
She says, "Thank you again for all the help that you and your crewmates did for my people."
It's, in a way, a normal day's work for a doctor. Every day is a new, exciting adventure. He did some interesting things, but not exactly outside of the normal.
She says, I've been thinking about everything that happened, and you have to understand the Telfi believe that when we die, our spirits rejoin our ancestors, and who we are ceases to be. And from our ancestors, new Telfi are born, and it's a cycle of a continuance.
That makes sense. I mean, there's similar ideologies like this throughout all of the Federation.
And we believe that rejoining our ancestors is a sacred honor, and death is constantly in our lives. It's something I'm sure, all worry about. I know I do. But there's a small comfort that when I die, I will join my parents and the rest of my family.
Oh, and you've been in war though as long as you guys have. Death is a constant, unfortunately.
But what I can't reconcile is that Jarek, he died. He died. His spirit should have gone to the ancestors, but you brought him back, and he's alive. That can't be possible. Not according to our teachings, not according to what our entire belief is built on.
Well, I kind of look at it as there's a couple different stages of death, if that makes sense.
And she kind of shakes her head and she says, while I am nowhere near as an impressive doctor as you, I do have training. I have seen people on the verge of death. This is different. He was dead. I saw it.
Oh, for sure. I would say he's in stage 1. Like I said, I kind of see it as there's a little bit of multiple stages of death. With the modern medicine that the Federation has developed over years and years and years and years and years and years, as well as the bringing in of the different species of it throughout the Federation, um, we've learned to develop and very much bring forward a lot of medical practices that, maybe 250 years ago we were in the same spot as you guys, but we've taken our technology and we've advanced it, and sure, we still lose people. That is unfortunately a constant, but it also there's kind of developed multiple stages. A person can die. I use air quotes, like actually hold up my hands and give air quotes. Um, where they flatline, their heart stop, things like that. But we're able to bring them back. Simply, old Earth technology of a defibrillator, giving shock to the body to restart the muscles and the nervous system around the heart to get it pumping again. Um, Even though they flatlined, we could consider that they died, but we were able to restart their heart and bring them back. Now, at one point in time in Earth's history or in Trill's history, I am Trill, but Earth is where I did most of my studying. Um, Being able to just even do an electric charge to restart the heart was unheard of. But technology and is advanced, and we figured out things as we went. Sure, things have happened, mistakes have been made, but we've kind of made it so that there's kind of a multiple stages of death. In order for somebody to be truly gone, you kind of have to go all the way through it.
And she says, I think what I'm trying to come to grasp with is that maybe death, in the sense that we understood it, is not right. Maybe death is not final. Or it is final in a way, and if he joined the ancestors, there would be no way for him to come back. He would not exist. So that means he must not have joined with them, which means there must be something else in death, because he was dead. So I think our understanding of it is totally wrong. Our traditions tell us something completely different.
I don't think it's necessarily wrong, but any tradition, I also look at it as they develop over time. Somebody's understanding of something develops over time. Um, any kind of theocracy or belief system develops over time. It's not just one day somebody believed this, and I mean, sure, it takes small groups, but even something that started out small has to gain followers and get people to change, and the developers things start to develop and bring in some local traditions and develop to still hold the ideology of that original founder, but also start to bring in some local things, and ideas change, and it's develops over time. So the way I see it is there's just a new development. It's not saying that it's wrong, it's something new has come up and things can adapt from there.
And she
At
says,
the end, you know, they're still gonna you're still join the ancestors, absolutely. But it might not be as short of a path as once thought.
but you have to understand the whole of Telfi society is built on our traditions.
Oh, I understand that.
It's core to our belief that when we die, this is what happens, and that removes much of the fear. I've never felt fear in the way that I have since I've walked out of that room and saw that he came back, because now I don't know what's next. I don't know what's next for me and my people.
Unknown. You have fear of the unknown. Something you've lived your entire life, and in many ways your entire society, in the same regiment. I mean, you guys have been into war for hundreds of years, at least. I don't know all the history, but it's gotten to the point where every generation that you've has been around, that's still around, that has been around in recent history, that is the known history, that's all they've ever known. Whenever something new comes up, you get a fear of the unknown. I mean, you guys probably didn't know the Federation existed until recently, and that there were hundreds of member worlds that span that this entire sector, the sectors of space. However, I don't know how you guys divide up the galaxy.
And I'm looking forward to the day when we can defeat the Holdar and join your community. The galaxy won't be safe until they are destroyed.
If you ask them, they'd probably say the same thing. Every story has two sides.
I hope that continuing to work with your people, you will begin to understand and perhaps help us in eradicating them.
I'm here to mend wounds of whoever comes in the door to my ward. It might be a Holdar, it might be a Telfi, but might be a human, might be a Romulan, might be a Klingon. I've already operated on them. It might be a Tholian, somebody who's tried to destroy the Federation on multiple occasions. I'm still going to operate them on them as they are my patient, and do my best that I can to save that individual, because that's my job as a doctor.
And
I don't pick favorites.
She laughs. She says, "You've never met a Holdar, have you?"
No. I've also never met a Tholian. But if you've read the stories on them, you don't necessarily want to know about them. They live on a class-wide demon planet with toxic atmosphere. They have to wear an environmental suit because the air is too cold. Like, they live basically in an inferno their entire life, in toxic atmosphere as well.
The Holdar are the closest to a monster that I could ever describe to you. They don't even have hearts. Actually, I think of them more as like a virus. They spread and they kill everyone they come in contact with. You wouldn't try to have a conversation with a virus, would you? No, you would eradicate it so that the host body could survive. The Telfi are the host, and the Holdar are, in this case, a virus. We've tried on multiple occasions to treaty with them, but they continue over our history to demonstrate atrocities. In fact, the planet, which had a name before, but we call Calamity, it's one of the planets in our system, millions of Telfi colonized it. And without warning, the Holdar approached the planet and burned off the entire atmosphere of the planet, killing everyone, without even as much as a communication.
I could see that being an issue, but being devil's advocate, as I just said, there's two sides to every story. You attribute a lot of things to the ancestors and following that. How do you know that that wasn't their sacred land that they saw as you violating their area? Not saying that burning off the atmosphere and killing everybody was right. That's not right. They should have communicated. But there's always two sides to every story.
And she says, well, for your sake, I hope that you come to realize what we have learned. And before too many more lives are lost, you join our cause. She said, as I've said, once once you become more familiar with them, you will see that there is no way forward.
I'm starting to understand them just by treating the few of you that I have. The anticoagulant, poison, whatever secretion that they make is very interesting, but I also attribute that to some uh, insects and other animals that have evolved on various planets that throughout the Federation that have in many ways developed that as a defense mechanism because they were under attack. Different things change over time to protect themselves. It's interesting.
Like I
You do
said
this.
before,
We do the same thing.
my analogy for a virus still stands. If we don't stop them, they will exterminate us. They have shown time and time again that is their intent.
Have you ever heard of well, you know me, I'm a trill. Have you ever heard of a symbiote?
I'm familiar with the term.
So my species, the trill, um, have theology, obviously, but have also done a lot of research and have figured out that we developed from essentially a marsupial, some sort of animal with like a pouch that they would have raised their young in. And there is another species on my planet called the symbiote, the trill symbiotes. They are a slug worm type thing that um, have developed a symbiotic relationship with us that the symbiote um, survives by being implanted into a trill host fusing with their uh, spine and nervous system to be able to share memories of Pathos as well as the current person. And in exchange, the person that is the host is then kind of afforded some benefits, such as they are resistant to things like poison, just because the symbiote inside wants to protect its host. So, from the outside looking in, it looks like we're purposely infecting ourselves with a virus, but we get a benefit through it.
So what you're saying is, and she kind of leaves it, like expecting you to fill in the blanks.
Viruses aren't necessarily bad. They are devastating to a population, absolutely. But there's also adaptations that come from them. And outside of that, uh, there is some benefit. If you look at human uh, evolution, the mitochondria, which is in the cell, a powerhouse, has its own DNA separate from the cell. There is been lots of research into the idea that that was basically some sort of infection that got into the cell of very early life of animals and uh, on planet Earth and learned to adapt to have basically a um, beneficial relationship between it and the cell. It got protection from the cell, and the cell got a benefit because it created energy for everything in the cell to be able to work. Did it probably wipe out a huge population because it was an infection? Yes. But there was a benefit that came out of it eventually.
And she thinks for a moment and she says, I think I see what you're trying to say, Doctor, and I at least can see a great benefit from us becoming acquainted with your Federation. And she rubs her eyes and she says, forgive me, Doctor, it has been a very, very trying day. I think with your leave, I'll go to my quarters and try to get some sleep.
If you need any assistance, don't be afraid to call. I can come send you a hypo spray for some sleep meds if you need them.
And she says, "Oh, okay." And your Dr. Kaluna has also been very helpful. She has offered to talk more, and I may take her up on that offer.
I would. Dr. Clune is very good person to talk to. She's very good at her job.
And she does a stand, and she like straightens her uniform and wipes her eyes one more time, and she says, well, thank you for the chat, Doctor. It was very informative. I hope you have a good night."
Have a good night. And I'm just gonna sit on the bench looking over the pond for a little bit longer before I turn.
Okay. And question, what is Kaluna going to be up to?
I don't think she's really in the mood to hang around the Esplanade at this point. But she maybe sees Dr. Dial, on one of the benches near the lake. But no, I think she is gonna pretty much follow up on what she told her sister, that she's gonna go straight to security and let them know what's up.
Okay. And as you're perhaps headed off to the central corridor where the turbolifts are, you catch the eyes of Commander Richard Ebbison, who's the station first officer. And he steps forward and kind of like catches your attention. He says, "Doctor, is everything okay?"
Well, just got done with a meeting with my sister, and became very clear very quickly that she is no longer an element in the family that I wish to keep.
And he kind of gestures to walk down the sidewalk with him. And he says, well, if you want, I'm a good listener.
Hmm. Well, I appreciate the offer. I don't think I'm in need of any decompression. I simply need to inform station security that she has, for lack of a better term, a dangerous neurotoxin on her person that could be used for, shall we say, less than legal activities.
And he kind of crosses his arms and he says, well, that certainly changes things a bit. What would you like us to do?
Well, as much as I hate to say this, even if she is family, I do believe that she needs to be tried and accounted for, the fact that she brought such a neurotoxin aboard the station. I mean, if we're going to put a father in jail over a hush addiction that could have been cured and handled through rehabilitation, estranging them from his daughter, then I see no reason why my sister should not also serve time in the brig and also be subjected to JAG's proceedings. After all, she came to a Federation station. She knew the rules she was obskirting.
He kind of swallows for a minute and wipes his jaw a bit, and he says, Kaluna, are you sure? Because once I start down that path, it'll kind of be out of my hands. And you realize he's kind of offering you a favor almost to get her out of jail almost.
Right. I think I'm going to turn it down. Kaluna has many things, but I think once she has her mind set on something, she sticks to it. So I think she's going to politely decline and say, while I appreciate the offer, I do think that it is prudent that we continue down the path to uphold the station's rules and regulations. After all, she only showed me one vial. Who knows how much she actually has on her person?
And he said, and this is the young Romulan female that you were sitting with earlier?
Aspen, yes.
All right, very well. And he taps his comm badge and he says, security, meet me at the Red Nebula immediately. And he says, I'm going to take a few minutes to walk over there, Doctor. If you change your mind, you have a few minutes to get back to me. But once, like I said, once I'm in there and I see her, it's going to go where it goes.
Understood. And while I don't see myself changing my mind, I do appreciate the discretion and the chance all the same.
And I think Dal, you said you were going to turn in after that, correct?
Yeah, after so long, I'm gonna kind of turn in after sitting in silence at the pond.
Okay. And moving back to Boomy. So, Boomy, I imagine that you and Mina have been sitting at the table, both working on your ice cream. And the memory that you helped her uncover was a memory of her mother and her father on some kind of beach vacation on Bajor. And she's so young that the details are really very fuzzy. But you've been able to pull out that basically before her mother died, they were just like playing on the beach pretty much. It was just like a typical beach day.
He'll just smile as he like helps as best he can. He's like, "Well, thank you for the ice cream."
And you notice across the table, she looks very sleepy. And she's doing this sort of thing where she's eating the ice cream slowly, slower and slower as her eyes just kind of get heavier and heavier.
He'll stand up and walk over to her, and he's like, "I think it's time for some sleep, right?"
And she says, yeah, and then we'll go see Papa.
Smile. Hold out a hand. They're like, "Do you need help?"
And she says, no, I'm not a baby.
Well, make sure you get to bed, okay? Is there anything you need before you go to sleep?
She kind of looks around and she just, her eye, she's at that point that, kids get to where they're so sleepy where like she's only barely able to keep her head up.
He'll make sure she gets to her room then.
And it's the sort of situation where when she finally lays down, she's pretty much immediately asleep. But she's still wearing her clothes and her face is like covered in Rocky Road.
Yeah, he'll get a little washcloth just to clean up her face, just gently, and then make sure she's tucked in. And what time is it roughly?
It's probably, I'd say maybe 10 o'clock our times. The station runs on 30 hours, a 30-hour clock, so it's probably like, what would I say? It's probably like 2400.
He will get up and go look at any information he can about her father, see how he's progressing with his recovery and what doctors are assigned to him, if any. And yeah, just go from there.
So as you're looking through it, you can see that Antos apparently has a not very distinguished career as an engineer in Starfleet. He's had some issues with following orders and being belligerent to his superiors, which kind of lines up with all the other events that have gone badly, like when he lost his wife and everything. But he's undergoing treatment in the brig. Dr. Pettiford, who is the chief of Ward 5 on First Chef, so it's kind of like your Cluna's counterpart necessarily on a different ward. He has been treating the lieutenant for just basically an addiction, and while they have different methods for weaning him slowly off, the reason he kind of self-medicated with it is starting to become apparent, and that he probably has several behavioral issues that might need therapy and then potentially other less harmful drugs to help him like deal with. But some of all that's coming out along with the side effects of actually coming off of Hush.
He'll look at the information. Well, no restriction not visiting him. And he's gonna go head on down to visit him.
Okay. So as you're walking through Red Sector is the place where everybody's quarters are, I guess. So Kaluna, were you going to head towards your quarters?
Yeah, I think she'd be headed back to her quarters because, at least in my mind, she realizes what she's just done, but at the same time, the vision I have for her is that she doesn't really dwell on it too long. It was one of those things where her relationship with her sister was already kind of on the rocks to begin with, so in her mind, this is nothing new. This is where it was always going to go. So maybe she runs into Dr. Boomy, just not paying attention and just runs into him, literally.
Yeah.
And I guess as I bounce off of Dr. Boomy, I say, my apologies, I didn't mean to... Oh, Dr. Boomy, where are you off to?
The brig, and where did you come from?
The Esplanade, just got done saying goodbye to my sister for the last time.
Ah, deep in thought, thinking of good memories. I will, won't hold it against you from bumping into me randomly. Although I think if you do that to remember the species, they have webbed hand. They might take offense to that.
Zakdorn, maybe?
No, Zach Dorner, the tactician-minded.
Zalden? I know it's a Z.
It is a Z. It's escaping me right now.
In any event, I would simply correct you on one matter. Anything but pleasant memories, unfortunately.
Oh. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Was there an attempt at least? It is a long journey out here.
To put it plainly, my sister thought it wise to bring aboard a very powerful neurotoxin and chemical that is not exactly legal. And simply put, I thought that if we are going to be throwing fathers and estranging them from their children, we're going to be throwing those fathers into the brig, then we might as well hold her accountable as well. After all, the rules have to apply equally to everyone, or what's the point?
Speaking of fathers, that's where I'm going to be heading down. I'm going to be talking with him, seeing how he's doing. Mina just went to sleep.
See. Tell you what, if you don't mind waiting a few minutes, why don't I go ahead and get changed and I'll join you.
Certainly, I'll make sure the elevator is ready and waiting.
And then after a nod, Kluna runs off to her quarters, gets changed into her, actual uniform / doctor's outfit, and joins Boomy to go to the brig and say hello.
Before we carry on with that, let's actually jump over to Dr. Dial.
Hello.
One moment, I gotta turn the lights on the turbolift.
Oh, like, haha.
There, that's better. So you step on the turbolift dial, this is the turbolift and the Esplanade, the main corridor that would take you down to Red Sector, actually, where your quarters are. And you've noticed that when you finally peel off from the Esplanade, you notice that most people have kind of left as it's getting later. The folks that were on, second shift were probably coming off work, and it's that final third shift now where, it's the last group before, your shift would start in the morning. But you step into the large turbolift, and it's just you. And the doors start to close, and when they're almost closed, they then stop and they open, and you see a young ensign. He's wearing yellow security, and he's actually got a small hand phaser at his waist. He steps in, he kind of looks around, he says, "Sorry, Lieutenant, thanks for holding it. This will be just a second out of your way." And he steps in, and behind him steps quite an alarming figure. You get your first glance at one of the Holdar, and it's the Holdar ambassador. So just a minute to describe this guy. For the best metaphor, he looks like a very large, hunched beetle. He's about 2 meters tall. He's got a carapace that's darkish blue with gradients of green. Like all the Holdar that you've read, he has 6 eyes, but his 6 eyes are arranged in 4 large eyes and then 2 small eyes beneath it, and they're just crystal black and very reflective. You can see yourself in them. His lower half is covered in a brownish fur. It's mostly under his belly. He walks with 6 multi-segmented legs, and they're almost like crab legs, and they end at little points. And he's got 2 forward mandibles that appear to be almost like the human equivalent of arms, but they have way more segments. And he has a large set of I think they're called chelicerae, which is like the fangs that spiders have to pull stuff into their mouth. It's got 2 of those they're jointed. And it doesn't really have a neck, but from the base of where its head joins it to its body, there's a mechanical device that's hanging off, and it's shaped like a diamond. But as the lieutenant kind of pushes you to the side, he makes room for the ambassador to walk onto the turbolift.
I just kind of go to the side. Good evening.
And the ensign says, good evening, sir. This will be just a second. The ambassador needs to make a trip up to Gold Sector.
Not a problem. They have the priority.
And he kind of looks at you and like, you can tell he's appreciative that you're understanding. And he says, Gold 7. And the doors close and the turbolift begins to go up. And the ambassador just kind of moves over closer to the side. And as the turbolift goes up, you see it as it's kind of rising up the central pillar. So what this turbolift does, and you've actually never gone up this far towards Gold Sector, which is like where the operations center is. But what happens is as the turbolift goes up, all of the sides on the turbolift, like something shifts, and instead of being, just like a plain looking wall, apparently the transparent aluminum part of it like becomes completely transparent, and you can actually see out into the air as you're rising up. It's kind of like those elevators that are on the side of, hotels that are, glass, that are designed like as you go up, you can see, everything around you. That's what the turbolift has done as it's gone up this like central corridor headed towards Gold Sector. So it's actually quite a tall climb. You go up 14, 15, almost 16 decks, and you get very close. You're getting very close to, going through the dome of the Esplanade into Gold Sector at the top.
I just kind of look out. I've never been up this far.
And the ensign says, yeah, I'm not a big fan of heights, so I usually just kind of look at my feet.
There are things that we can do to help you out a little.
And the ensign kind of leans over and he says, have you ever seen what the hold are before?
I have not. I've been intrigued.
It's a little scary.
So how'd you get this duty?
Well, I'm starting to think Risu doesn't like me too much.
Or he trusts you a lot.
And he says, well, the ambassador kind of keeps to it. Him. Well, I was about to say him. I guess the better technical term would be it, because I don't think it has a gender.
Or doesn't have a gender that we know of.
And at this point, you catch the eyes of the ambassador. It's actually kind of turned its head towards you, and you see all 6 of its eyes are gazing in your and the ensign's direction.
I just look over the ambassador. Good evening, ambassador. No idea if he understands me, but I'm going to attempt.
And the ensign says, well, I don't know if you've heard, Lieutenant, but communication is probably the biggest problem we have with the Holdar. That thing that it's wearing on its neck is the translator that they built to help translate their language into something the universal translator can pick up. I don't think the ambassador's really said much more than a greeting to me the whole time, and I've been escorting him for days.
Have you tried?
Yeah, I've tried carrying on conversation, and all I get is a greeting. But that's fine with me. Easy detail. I guess no complaining is a good thing, too.
It's also possible that's all the translator has been able to decode.
Yeah.
They're not as advanced as the Federation. Their universal translator doesn't work quite the same as ours. But the only way it's going to get better is if we continue to engage in conversation. And besides, he was acknowledging me, so I feel like it's only courteous to at least acknowledge him.
Yeah, of course, we'll keep trying. And at that point, the conversation cuts off, because what happens is the lights on the turbolift go out. There's a sharp jolt as the turbolift stops, and it stops almost at the top of Gold Sector, the beginning of Gold Sector. So you're kind of at the very top of the Esplanade Dome, and you can see all the many decks, the straight drop down below to like the forested area of the Esplanade. And you recognize that for just a moment, and then the turbolift drops.
Hold on.
And we're actually going to leave you there. We'll get back to you in just a moment. But Kaluna and Boomy, Kaluna, you would have just walked out of your quarters, and you see Boomy standing there waiting. And as you walk out, the doors to your quarters start to close, and then all the lights immediately cut out.
Does emergency lighting kick on?
A few seconds later, the emergency lights do kick on.
Right, so I pause, look at the ceiling. Wonder if that's power loss to this section or if that's station wide.
Well, I'm no engineer, but you'd think they'd have multiple generators on such a large station.
Indeed. And then knowing probably that, 1,001 people are trying to call at once, she's going to still try her comm badge to see if she can reach anyone in engineering.
And when you tap your comm badge, it doesn't even make the chirp that it normally makes when it's like connecting.
Well, now that is very concerning. If we're not even able to get interstation communications, that means something very, very bad is happening.
Well, I haven't made many telepathic friends here yet because I've been busy doing duties and shift rotations and Ward 7. But I could attempt to poke around and see if there's a Vulcan nearby.
You do that. Just for security, I'll grab my Type 1 out of my quarters, just in case we need it.
Well, luckily Mina's asleep, so as long as life support holds, she should be okay.
And biting back the comment about, well, luck only goes so far. Cluna's just going to walk back in. Maybe he has to manually open the door, but goes in, grabs, a tricorder with a flashlight attachment and Type 1 phaser. Not the big like vacuum cleaner size thing, but like the little chip that can be hidden. And
Right.
she stows that away and uses her tricorder flashlight for light and says, "All right, well, I know we were destined originally for the brig, but curious where we should go at this point."
And I should fill in that according to regulations, in an event like this, you're all supposed to report to your ward, which all of the wards in Blue Sector are built as independent units with their own power supply, their own atmospheres, and everything.
Then I regurgitate that and I say, I believe it is protocol that we have to go to our ward at this juncture.
Well, he'll tap the turbo lift, see if anything happens.
Nope, nothing.
Well,
Approximately how many decks would we have to climb through the Jeffries tubes to get there?
There are, I think, in not only Jeffries tubes, but also stairs, I think, are probably called for at some point in Star Trek stuff that we never see. So you don't always have to take a ladder to get between decks. Like they probably have backups in like a hospital, I would imagine, for this sort of thing. So there are probably stairs. There is the case of, let's see, I have in my notes, Red Sector has 41 decks, Gray Sector has 39 decks. So you have to go through about 80 decks. I'd say probably 75 decks if you're on maybe deck 5 of Red Sector. Probably 75 decks going down before you get into Blue Sector.
Then, as I remember that, I simply sigh and say, well, we're going to get some exercise on this one at least.
Oh, what is it, just 20 decks down?
No, more like 70.
Boomy just looks at you for a second and he just looks down and is like, I'm rotund.
Well, maybe we can burn off some of those calories.
He just looks at you for a second.
Listen, if there were any other option, I'd take it, but I don't think we have much of a choice here.
Well, I won't be going first. Well, let's
guess
see.
we go to the nearest staircase, wherever that might be.
Yeah. So as you make your way through, you notice the emergency lights are the only thing on. Like there are typically wall panels and stuff that are on to give, directions or like maps to say like, you are here or anything like that. All of those things are off. The only thing that you see through the corridors as you make your way is the emergency lights. And in fact, you see people, throughout the hallways forcing their doors open or trying to, come out of their quarters, so forcing their doors so they can get out in the hallway. There seems to be a bit of organized chaos though, because this is something that typically everyone at least has had a bit of training for, to know at least where to go in this sort of situation. So people seem to be trying to work out to go somewhere. They're not just like standing around freaking out or anything. But as you make your way to the staircase, it's kind of busy, and most people are doing the same thing as you. They're going down to Blue Sector.
Well, let us know when we get there, I guess.
Right? So but at least it's it's a very long way, but at least it's down instead of up. Up would be very different.
I'm going to say about 20 steps in, Boomy's just going to start humming some folk music.
And I kind of look over and I go, "Is that traditional hiking tune?"
Well, I figured since we're going to be going down a lot, it's reminiscent of a mountain. I believe this one here, if I remember correctly, is German. An old region on Earth. Yodeling is a part of it, but I don't think the acoustics are too good here.
Yodeling is. Oh, yes, I know what yodeling is. Um, this is going to sound odd, but how much of it do you know?
Fair bit, actually. I really enjoy listening to different worlds' music. There are a few of them, though, that I do try to commit to memory. Especially in such a fun occasion. See gestures at the dim lighting.
Well, let's see how much you know. Do you have any Franz Lang?
And just think for a moment and potentially, do you know any of it to start off with?
Despite herself, I think she does attempt a little bit of a yodel.
Booby just has a big grin on his face.
I think as I finish giving my little segment, I think I say, well, if we're going to be scaling the Alps or running down the Alps as it were, might as well be in good spirits about it.
Certainly. I also think it'll be quite comical for anyone else who's wondering what's happening in this staircase.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
And yeah, Boomy will start yodeling.
I think this could be kind of interesting. Kaluna, why don't you do a show compassion roll for me, please?
Sure. Let's see. Am I adding anything to it?
No,
A weak hit, so something.
This is you showing compassion to helping Boomy dealing with the situation, and I think, I think your mind body solution would come into play here. So I think what I'm trying to coax out of the rules is, I think this is a situation where Kaluna is reading some of Boomy's anxiety and perhaps humoring him by yodeling. So where I'm getting at is, since you rolled a weak hit, you can remove one of Boomy's stress from the stress track. After they've answered your questions, I think this is Boomy the player, not Boomy the character, answering your question.
Right. So what I'm curious is, I mean, I have an inkling, but what's really going on in Boomy's mind right now? Is it just standard sort of like parenting worry, or what's sort of the angle there?
Oh, he's definitely worried about, like, and troubled about uh, Mina's father. He wants to try and help more with that situation.
Mhm.
He's been a father, he's a grandfather, he's a great grandfather. He wants to make sure that, um, the relationship between her and her dad are still going to survive and it's not going to get ruined. like, despite having, to, report the incident, it was the right thing to do because, her dad needs help, but he wants to make sure he's getting the right help. That's what he's troubled by. He wants to make sure he is getting the right help.
Hmm. Interesting. So, I think with that in mind, how can I help the character?
Well, the dad needs therapy.
Okay.
So,
Let's see where you're going with that.
yeah.
So I think that'll cover you getting into Boomy's head a little bit, Kaluna. And remember, Boomy, you can take off 1 stress from this bit of insight that Kaluna gets as the two of you are traveling down towards Blue Sector.
Nice.
But talking about stress, let's talk about what Dial is dealing with here. So Dial, as you sort of regain consciousness almost, you open your eyes and you see very little. In fact, the turbolift is very dark. The lights on the turbolift are out. You can see really only visibility from the small amount of lights that's being cast up from the esplanade far, far below. You see that you probably fell 4 or 5 decks before the turbolift caught itself. And then as you
emergency brakes.
Yeah, as you gain your wits, you see that you are probably fine. You just have a few bumps and bruises. You look over and you see the figure of the ambassador, who doesn't appear to be in any immediate distress. And then you look over and see the crumpled form of the ensign.
Once I get my bearings straight, go over to the ensign, take a look at it. What am I seeing on him? Is he just out because he's afraid of heights and falling and that? Or did he get cut by the ambassador by accident and is now like bleeding out profusely?
Let's see, because you're an intern, let's do a feign competence here.
Oh boy. Feign competence. Do I have to do anything to it? Just roll
Yeah, it's just a nerve.
Oh!
All right.
Oh.
Okay, you definitely gained some insight in the current situation. So what happened was you were standing near the side of the turbolift. The ambassador was standing near the side of the turbolift. The ensign was standing right, probably near the center. So he wasn't near any of the railing. So what happens is when it first started to drop, well, before that, it kind of lurched to a stop and you were able to catch yourself. And then it dropped and it stopped again. So what you can see probably happened to the ensign is by having no way to brace himself, he probably when the turbolift stopped, as it was dropping, he probably flew up really hard and hit the ceiling and then fell back down. And as you kind of look at him, he doesn't really have any like visible external bleeding, but he does have a sign of internal bleeding because as you're like checking his abdomen, it feels very very swollen and some of his skin kind of looks purplish.
I mutter several words under my breath. And I start looking. Would there be an emergency medical kit in the somewhere in the turbo lift?
There is not.
I feel like on a medical base we should have emergency medical kits on the turbo lift. Future note for Commodore. There's like nothing I can do right now.
So taking stock of what you have here, which I think if you were looking for a medical kit, you would probably take stock of all the inventory of everything that's there. Really the only thing equipment-wise you have is you have your communicator, the ensign's communicator, the ensign's phaser, which was a Type 2 he did have on his belt, which is probably laying, the bottom of the turbo left when it probably flew out when he flew out to hit the ceiling. And then there's whatever mechanical device the ambassador is wearing.
I look up the ambassador. Are you injured?
And the ambassador takes a few steps forward and you feel the presence of this thing getting closer because it's actually very large and not exactly tall, but the mass of this thing just projects. And it leans its head forward a little bit, and what you notice are the two, like, I call them fangs almost of this. They're like two little arms in the front that spiders have to pull things they're going to eat in. And as it leans closer, it's those little fangs are kind of clicking together. And you get a good sense of the hairs underneath its body moving as it gets closer, and it sort of leans into the ensign, and then it leans out, and those little, like, fangs click a little faster, and the device that's wearing it has around its neck just says in like a mechanical voice, you hear, "Hurt?"
I looked at him. Yes, he's very hurt from that impact, and if we don't get moving, I'm afraid we're not going to be able to save him. Unless, do you have any medical know-how or kits on you?
And the ambassador leans back and tilts its head to the side, and its forward mandibles, it kind of rubs together and just stands there staring at you.
I'm going to take that as a no. That's all right. I hit my communicator, hoping that it's going to connect, realizing it's probably not going to.
Yeah, it doesn't even make the chirp.
It makes the dead click sound. All right. I just start like going through my head of all the different things that I should be doing, but not having the materials to be able to do it. It's not like I can like give him a hypo spray to help with pain or anything like that. He's knocked out cold. At least the ambassador doesn't seem to be hurt.
So that strong hit that you made on your feign competence roll, I'll tell you that you know an internal bleeding, usually you've got to act fast, especially from some, like blunt force trauma like this. It's probably pretty serious. And as you're looking around, you look, and you look out the sides of the turbolift and you see straight down, and then your eyes kind of continue, and you notice that the turbolift is actually attached to the side of that central corridor that goes all the way up through the center of the esplanade. And you see there are actually stairs. It's more like a ladder that runs up along the central corridor as well. So there's a ladder. You could climb down the entire length of this thing. It's a climb that's like 14 stories, but then you still have to get out of the turbolift, but it is possible to climb your way down.
Would it be possible to climb my way up? Is that less space to travel?
It is. It is.
Is it like attached, like I can emergency exit the doors, or do I have to go through a hatch through the top?
Yeah, oddly enough, they built the door facing outward. So if you get the doors open, you still would have to negotiate your way around the turbolift to get to the ladder that's attached to the central corridor. So like the door itself is not facing the corridor, if that makes sense.
Okay. I'm sure the ambassador's looking at me thoroughly confused as I'm trying to calculate in my head what I need to do.
And it leans in closer to you, actually, and then the mechanical voice again says, "Hurt?"
I am personally not hurt. No, I appreciate your worry. I hope you aren't hurt and telling me that you are hurt. I'm sorry. I'm rushing through things in my head trying to save him. Things that he's internal bleeding. The only thing I can think of is try to get to the ladder over there. I point through the window and try to go up, because up is less things to travel than down. I'm sure you're more able to do it, just because you seem like you are insectoid and able to do that kind of stuff. But I am no athlete.
And then the ambassador's device says, "Far."
Down is a lot further than up. I'm like actually pointing with my hand to like being able to kind of distinct. Up would be less far. It's not exactly close either.
And it tilts its head again, and it says to you, lighter.
Lighter meaning light, or lighter meaning weight? And I kind of do like point to the light, or actually like point to like weight myself, things like that, to kind of distinguish the two.
And then it turns its head to the other side, and it says, light.
Still don't know which one you're using. I don't know what happened to the light, and I gotta point to like the lighting in the turbo lift. Something must have happened on the station. Up would most likely have emergency lighting, so some sort of light.
And then the ambassador's voice says again, and it's hard to tell because it's being translated like 2 times over and then projected through a mechanical thing around its neck, but it says in something you feel is more emphatic. It says hurt again.
He's hurt. I'm shaken but not hurt. Are you hurt? And I like shake my head yes or no, kind of like hurt, not hurt, like pointing to the ensign, like shaking my head yes that he is hurt, but me shaking my head no that I'm not hurt. To kind of get gestures.
And it rubs its forward mandibles, faster, and after a moment it says light.
Oh, you need light because you're hurt?
And it just stares at you.
I'm like trying to think of gestures to do. Ensign hurt. He won't weigh much. Light that way. Pointing up.
For a moment, it kind of stares there and looks at you, and then it looks down at the phaser on the ground and looks back at you.
I look over at the phaser, but I don't move. And just go, I will not hurt you.
And then it looks around the turbolift and sort of fixates on the door for a minute. And then it's doing this thing where it's looking at the door and then looking at you and then occasionally glancing at the phaser.
You think we can get the door and go over there to get out? I like note this phaser that is there, but I don't look at it just to kind of like point that I'm not trying to intimidate him.
Before we cut away, the last thing is the ambassador again leans in and it says, light.
I just point up light that way.
Kaluna and Boomy, as you're making your way down the stairs, heading closer and closer to Blue Sector, you are eventually, you notice that the markings on the walls of the hallways and throughout the station are color coded based on what sector you're in. So like when you're in red sector, there's a line of red that kind of goes along the walls to also represent where you are. As you get down into gray sector, which is like where the main hangar bay is and airlocks and stuff, you see that red stripe is replaced with gray to let you know that you're headed the right way. You notice a lot of people have started peeling off as they're going to different areas, but as you're making your way down, you start going into gray sector, and you're probably about 3 or 4 levels down when you hear someone coming down the hallway on, which got to probably be gray 7, so deck 7 of gray sector, and he says, "Wait," he says, hey, we need help. We need help. Are you medical personnel?"
Booby will stop yodeling and nod. And head on over. He's like, yes, we are. Dr. Booby.
Oh, thank goodness. You're doctors, right?
Yes.
Last I checked.
We've got kind of an accident around one of the airlocks. We need some medical assistance. I've been trying the intercom, or my communicator, but nothing is going through.
Nope, lead the way.
And as he's leading the way, you get a kind of a glance of who he is through some of the emergency lighting. He looks like a youngish human. He's got red hair. He's wearing, it looks like, engineering coveralls, and from the pip that's on his collar, you only get a glance of it. It looks like he's probably enlisted, but he's leading you further into gray sector. Are you both going to follow him?
I mean, unless he's giving us reason to doubt him, I don't see why we wouldn't.
Yeah. Boomy will try, though, to reach out to anyone telepathically that he can reach, just see if they know what's going on.
So you don't catch anyone that you can have a conversation with, but the emotions that you do pick up are mostly confusion and a little bit of fear in the immediate area.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just follow him.
So the young
Same.
crew... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I was doing the same.
So the young crewman leads you down to an area of gray sector that's leading to one of the outer airlocks. So this is an airlock that's usually used for EVAs. It's not something that's connected to other starships. That's probably a different area. This area is much more mechanical. It looks a little unfinished. And as you make your way around, you see small, windows out into space and everything, and you realize that you're very close to the actual outer hull of the hospital. But as he's leading you further down, you hear shouting. And as you round the corner, you get closer to one of the outer airlocks, and you see a situation unfolding. There are 2 people that are arguing, like very, very loudly, in front of one of the airlock doors. One is a human. He looks a bit older. He's got kind of a brownish hair with some white in it, and he's wearing rank pips that say lieutenant, and he's got like a yellow engineering uniform on. And then the person that he's yelling with is a Tellarite who has also engineering coveralls that kind of match this crewman's who led you here. And his rank pip shows that he's a chief. But the 2 are yelling very loudly at each other as you all approach. And actually, this situation, as you're walking into it, is pretty stressful, so much so that I'm going to give each of you 1 stress.
What seems to be the problem?
And the Tellarite turns to you and he says, "Oh, who are you?"
Dr. Boomisius Miskius Pitlick, or Boomy.
What? What the hell? What? Are you a doctor?
Yes.
He's good. Then you can get the lieutenant to your head checked, because there is no way I'm letting him shut the power off to this airlock. I'm not going to let it happen.
What seems to be the problem, though, medically?
And the lieutenant says, "Chief, you don't have a choice. I'm giving the order. We're shutting off power to the outer airlock."
Hold on. Why do we need to shut off power?
And the lieutenant sighs and he motions, and you can see through the small glass viewport on the inner airlock door. And he kind of points you both to look into the actual airlock space. And you can see the outer airlock door is closed, but in the airlock space between the doors, there's a collapsed individual. And what immediately captures your attention is just above that collapsed individual is a ruptured conduit of some kind. and you see the very obvious tail of a green plasma burn coming out of that conduit into the small, airlock chamber. And the lieutenant says, that is why we need to cut off power. If we keep that going, that will ignite and we could lose the entire deck. We've got to shut off power to this sector, to this floor, and then that will go away. That's a plasma fire. That's a big problem.
So, real quick, because I had a jet fly overhead, did you say there was somebody in there as well?
Yeah, there's a collapsed form of someone.
Okay, so I guess my question is, how long, or is it even feasible without, maiming oneself to get that person out of there?
When you ask that question, the chief says, now we're getting someone that actually has some sense. We need to open the interlock door, get the kid out of there, and get him some treatment. If you shut off power, what's going to happen is that outer door is going to open and it's going to suck him out into space.
I look at the ranking officer and I just wait for a response. Because I'm curious if there's any way we can get this person out of there.
The lieutenant says, listen, I understand he's your man, and I don't want to lose him either. We don't know that airlock door will open. But if we don't shut off power, that fire could get worse. It could go up the EPS power grid, and who knows, we could lose half the station. We need to cut it off.
Not answering my question, though. Can we get him out of there?
And the chief says, listen. Yes, we can get him out of there. If we open this airlock door, and you can see beside him, he's actually got the panel pulled open, like he was probably trying to do this at some point before the lieutenant showed up. He's like, just a few more connections. I can get that door open, the inner door, and we can get the kid out of there. Then you can do whatever the hell you want, shutting off power.
Well, then let's stop wasting time. Let's get this done.
And the lieutenant steps forward. He says, no, you're not opening that inner door. If you do that, you'll flood this entire compartment with radiation.
This is a airlock room, right? Like it's a departure for EVA?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know if I described it well enough. You're outside of the small airlock that's between the doors. You're actually in the station side. So you're standing next to the inner airlock door, and that's where this conversation's happening.
Yeah. So this would be the room which would have toolkits and stuff like that to get prepped before you go walk out.
Yeah. There's lots of that.
Tricorder?
I think you could find an engineering tricorder somewhere. Yeah.
Now I'm going to use it as a medical tricorder.
So you grab the engineering tricorder and make a few setting changes. I'm assuming you want to scan the guy that's collapsed in there.
Yeah, and how much radiation is being pumped into that room.
It's a significant amount. You can quickly tell. It looks like he probably has just a simple concussion. Probably what happened was he lost gravity and then gravity came back and threw him around some. So that part of him is probably not too bad, but he is getting a pretty heavy dose of radiation from that plasma leak that's just, a few feet away from his head.
And how much radiation is that plasma leak pumping out? Because I imagine his spacesuit is slightly protected, but how much of that is going to hit us directly?
Oh, but here's the thing: he's not wearing a suit.
Oh, he's not wearing a suit.
Yeah, he's just in there.
Okay, what's the level of radiation
It's pretty bad. It will become definitely fatal for him in a matter of minutes.
But it's not fatal right now. So he's been in there for how long? Did we get told that?
You haven't been told that, but what you can tell are a few things. It's going to be fatal for him in a few minutes, and probably fatal for all of you if it keeps burning this way shortly thereafter. This inner airlock door is designed to block some radiation, but this thing is kicking out a lot, and it's just this fire is actually, you can tell visibly, it's getting worse.
And how long has power been out? How many minutes have we been going down the stairs?
Oh, probably 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. Gotta look at the readouts. We can open the door, be exposed, we'll be fine. If he's been in there for 15, 20 minutes already with this radiation, he can still be recovered. You can still treat him. The minor radiation we'll get, that's treatable. But he only has a few more minutes before it's irreversible.
And the Tellarite says, yeah, listen to this guy, you idiot. He knows what he's talking about. He's a doctor. And the lieutenant says, my concern is we open this inner door. That plasma will get more oxygen. It'll grow. And who knows the state of the outer airlock door? If we put pressure on it, it could just pop open. If you look, it's not sealed correctly. And he points, and you can see there are emergency red lights around the actual outer airlock door showing that it's not closed all the way. You don't actually see it open to space, but those lights are supposed to mean that, it's not closed.
How's the air pressure in there? Is it comparable to outside?
It's a little less than it is in the hallway where you are.
I mean, I say we go for it. I don't know what you're thinking, Shizno, but I think we go for it.
Well, yeah, Boomy has no actual say. He's not like an officer at all. He doesn't have a commission rank. He is a doctor brought in. So,
right. And it might be something where maybe this is a question out of character. Does Kaluna even have the authority to order people around? Because again, she's not Starfleet technically.
If Kaluna wants to make the attempt to step in and intervene, it's something I'll make a roll for. But I think you could potentially, it's not something you'll get in trouble for necessarily. Like, you do have position and rank, even though it's not like Starfleet rank, you do have authority. So it's something you could negotiate after the fact, but I will make you do a roll, like an assert your authority roll, because I think that's exactly what it's for.
Yeah, let's try it. If I succeed, great. Maybe we'll save the kid, but if not, oh well. Okay. Let's see. Assert my authority. Any modifiers?
No, I don't think so.
That looks like a big negative.
So what happens is, as you say what you should do, the lieutenant steps forward and he's like, no, I'm not taking the chance. I'm the one in charge. I'm the deck chief. I'm not going to compromise the safety of the station for Malcolm. I like the kid. I don't want to lose him. We're going to go out there. We'll do this right. We'll we'll suit up. We'll go around the outside of the hull and we'll try to force open the door. You all know that he will not be alive when they get around to do that. And in fact, the Tellarite steps forward and he says, you don't understand something, Lieutenant. This door's coming open in a minute. You can get on board or you can go do your plan or whatever you want to do. But I'm about to open this door.
Again, if I was a ranking officer, I might do something, but I'm not. That's the thing. I mean, because, I do want to help, but I don't have authority here, so...
And Boomy, you notice the Tellarite, as he's having this conversation, he kind of snakes his hand over and picks up a wrench, and he's getting ready to brain the lieutenant.
Now that is something we can act on.
Yeah, Boomy's just gonna step in closer, and he was like, I'm sorry, I don't like losing patience, but it's one life versus half station.
And the chief says, I'm not leaving this kid behind. And the lieutenant says, very well, everybody, let's evacuate the area. We're going to seal it off. Chief, if you don't come with us, we're going to leave you behind. And the chief's like, do what you got to do. And Lieutenant turns to you and he says, doctors, I need you to clear the area, get all the way back to the stairwell. I'm going to close the doors and we're going to cut power.
As you say, Lieutenant.
Boomy will just nod at the Tellarite. Head on back.
And as you're walking through, walking back to the stairwell, following the lieutenant, you see the Tellarite. He's starting to work on the panel like he's going to work the doors open. But as you follow the lieutenant back in the stairwell, he hits a key, some keys on the door that led to this deck, and the door slams shut. And he says, it's a good thing the secondary reactor's kicked in. I don't know what scrubbed the primary reactor, but the main computer's not coming back online. That's what all this is about. The backup computers are doing everything they can, but I don't know what the heck hit us.
About that, do you have any information what's actually going on here? Or are you just in the dark as the rest of us?
I'm just in the dark as the rest of you. I mean, like I said, the main power went out. That was the problem. Apparently the main computer didn't come back up, which is a little surprising, but it's a new station. We've got some bugs here and there. The good thing is the secondary generators did kick in. That's why we're all still breathing. And then also the secondary computers. But, main engineering is working on getting the reactor back up and the computer working, so I imagine we'll have systems restored soon.
Well, I believe then we need to continue onwards, Dr. Boomy.
Aye.
And back in the turbolift as Boomy and Kaluna make their way continuing down to the blue sector. Back here on the turbolift with you, Dial. It's been sort of the same. You've been in a staring contest with the ambassador for a bit.
I just look at him. We need to go that way.
And he looks at you again. He looks at the phaser and then the door, and his device says, light.
You want me to use the phaser to cut through the door? How close am I to the door?
I'd say the whole circumference of the turbolift is probably 25, 30 feet. So, you could... the interior is so large that you're not touching shoulders with the ambassador, or if the ensign were still walking around, not touching shoulders with him. So you can get as close or far away from the door as you'd like.
I'm going to stay around the edge and start scooting closer over to the door. Keeping an eye on, looking at the ambassador, not making any sudden moves, and see if he's reacting. But I'm going to go over to the door and see if I can get it to release.
When you get to the door, you try to put your fingers in the center part to force it open, and it doesn't budge.
Is there a panel for an emergency release?
There is a panel, yep.
I'm going to pull off the panel to see if I can get the door to emergency release.
Why don't you give me a feign competence roll, because I think this is a little outside of Dial's wheelhouse.
Okay. Weak hit.
So you pull open the panel, and you notice there are a lot of wires.
I just look at it and go, not as easy as the videos always show. Usually there's just a lever in there. I'm going to kind of stick my arm and feel around, see if I can feel if there's an actual lever, or if I'm going to have to somehow cut the wire to release the electric lock.
You don't feel a lever, but giving you your due from your weak hit, you do notice the very classical red wire and green wire.
So I take note. Red wire is typically the one that they clip to deactivate things. Usually it's bad things if you're going by the stereotypical movie, but red wire it is. I look over to the ambassador. Can I borrow your I make scissors motion, your blade?
And the ambassador doesn't move or approach you in any way, but it says light again.
I'm working on the light. I'm looking around. Is there any kind of sharp? Well, I guess is the side of the access panel sharp enough that if I pull the wire up, it'll break the wire?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
You said the red wire, right?
Yeah.
as you pull the red wire out of the connector, the door opens just a bit. And as you like put your hand in, you can now move it open. It's like that red was probably locking it shut. By pulling it out, you've kind of unlocked it, and now you can force it open.
I force it open with the best of my unathletic ability.
As you force the door open, it's not too difficult. It's immediately apparent to you that just a few inches away from the threshold of the door is just open air that drops many, many stories down to the bottom of the esplanade.
Well, glad to see that that's there. Wasn't expecting there not to be some sort of protecting cylinder. I step back in, look at the ambassador. That's a long way down.
The ambassador has now moved himself so he's actually standing over the ensign, and this happened while you were working on the door. You didn't notice it.
I just look back. Ambassador?
And this time its mechanical device says, even louder than before, light.
Are you meaning that he's like losing the light, like he's dying?
And just after you say that, its forward mandibles reach down and they pick up the ensign.
I'm gonna like stand back and stand clear of the door because I don't know what's gonna happen.
It takes a few steps forward and it looks at you. So it's now sort of standing in the center of the turbo lift. It looks at you for a moment, and then it looks over at the phaser on the ground. And then it looks back at you.
Ambassador, is everything okay? I'm just looking at the ambassador. I'm not even trying to look at the phaser whatsoever.
And it kind of shifts a bit so that, it has those two forward mandibles. Well, one of them is holding the ensign kind of over its shoulder, and one of the mandibles is actually kind of stretched out a bit towards the doorway.
Ambassador, that's a long way down. Are you going to jump? I'm going to kind of step out of the way of the doorway, like stand over to the side.
It actually takes a step closer to you.
Ambassador?
And in fact, it gets even closer still, and you're very aware of the fur that's at the bottom of this thing's carapace. And that one mandible with the like sharp tipped claw on the end is almost touching you.
Ambassador, are you saying that you want to take me to try to save him?
And it just stands there.
I mean, if you're going to jump, I'd prefer to ride on your back, not by a mandible. Just personal preference.
And it looks at you again, and then it looks at the door.
We have better luck going up than we do going down. But I can't scale the side of this turbolift.
And it looks at you again, and you're trying to discern emotions basically from an electronic device, but you feel like this electronic voice, when he says this, is almost in a softer tone than it says light.
All right. You haven't done anything to injure me now. Let's go.
And it stretches forward its mandible, and its many joints kind of curl around your waist. And just as you're getting getting over the creepiness of this thing, because it's kind of like a skinny crab leg that's wrapping around you. It doesn't even wait a minute, and it vaults towards the door. It jumps out of the turbolift, and for just a few seconds, the three of you are in a free fall down to the bottom, to the ground of the Esplanade. You're falling several stories, and then you look back, and you hear kind of a buzz, and this buzz are from two giant wings that have extended from the side of the ambassador's back carapace, and it's like very quickly flapping them, and you all gently, as you continue to fall, slow down, and you get slower and slower until you reach the ground, the bottom of the Esplanade.
So as soon as we land and he lets go of me, I run over to the whatever one of the nearest building is to grab a emergency medical care.
And as you're doing that, you walk back, you see the ambassador has very softly laid the ensign down on the grass.
I look at the ambassador. Thank you very much. And I get to work on trying to slow the internal bleeding.
And the ambassador steps back and it says, "Light." And you get the feeling that it wasn't talking about physical light. It might have actually been talking about weight.
I just look at the ambassador. I think you mean more weight than light. And smile at him. And start going to town on trying to save the ensign.
And we're actually going to jump to the ward the very next morning, and I'll catch up on events on what's happened. So all three of you here are here in the ward at the start of your shift on the next day. And what happened, Boomy and Kluna, is you eventually made your way down to Blue Sector. You had a few scrapes and bruises that you had to treat. But within maybe an hour or two time after having reached here, main power came back online. The station was fully operational, and you were able to go to your quarters and, rest. For you, Dial, you were able to treat the ensign. He did have internal injuries, but with main power on, and then the first aid that you gave him, you were definitely able to fix whatever was wrong with him. The ambassador was escorted back to his quarters or wherever he was going, and that was that. But I'm going to start the next morning with all the three of you in the ward to give you just some time to catch up and reflect on everything that happened there.
So I just looked to him. How eventful was your night in the blackout?
Well, it was fun yodeling until we had to watch poor man have to make a terrible decision.
How do we know the outcome of that? We continued on.
Well, there's one way to know. And I asked the computer, what's the status of so-and-so ensign or crewman?
And the computer reports that when Chief Grezin was the name of the Tellarite, when he opened the inner door, the actual outer door opened and it pulled him and crewman Malcolm Rasul into space, and it killed them both.
Oh.
Well, there's our answer, everybody.
Well, I'm sorry to hear
Not a
that.
very happy thing, but it is what happened.
Mine was at least somewhat more successful. The ensign didn't die.
Yes, I understand you actually had a chance to meet our soulless killers, as it were. What was your impression of them?
Not as soulless as they're always made out to be. The ambassador actually saved. Not so much me, but got us off the turbo lift, fell. And they have wings apparently. And took us down to the ground where I was able to administer the first aid to save his escort, the ensign. So not as soulless as they're made out to be. I think very misunderstood because they don't speak in the same way as we do, but
Which actually has me wondering. I get the sense that we need a better idea of what we're dealing with here, because right now we are more or less operating in the dark.
At least not literally now, as I point up to
Hmm.
the light on the ceiling.
Fair.
We don't know what caused the power outage either, do we?
No, as far as I know, we never got, at least I never got an explanation for it.
Is your sister all right?
I haven't checked. I'm not sure I want to know.
Well, I'm going to go and do a checkup on a certain individual in the brig.
Well, it doesn't appear that we have anything going on, so go right ahead.
We will nod and turn on his heel and head towards the turbo lift.
And then as you head towards the turbolift Kaluna, your comm badge chirps. And it's operations, actually.
Go ahead, Ops. This is Kaluna.
And you hear the voice of Commander Ebbison. He's the first officer. He says, Doctor, I hope this isn't a bad time. Want to catch up on a few things.
No, it's not a bad time. There's not much going on here in the ward. Let me step in my office and we can have a conversation. And I just sort of nod at Dial and the other nurses, and I literally step into my office.
And as you walk in, his communication maybe switches to the terminal on your desk, and you can see his face. And Ebbison is in his position in the operations center, which behind him you can see lots of folks going back and forth, looking at like system displays of this system and then the neighboring Belladonna system, which is where the Telfi and Holdar are from. But as you walk in, he says, first of all, Doctor, how are you holding up?
Doing quite well, all things considered. Do we know what was the cause of that power outage earlier?
Actually, we do. A power surge on the edge of this system it caused the main reactor to shut off, and when the main reactor came back on, unfortunately there was a problem and the main computer didn't reboot, and that's the cause of most of our troubles. That's actually what I'm communicating with you about. Need to call you up here for a meeting at 1100 hours on Gold 2. Bring your best staff or people you trust. We're going to go on a little field trip.
A field trip, you say?
We've picked up something on the edge of the system, and we don't exactly know what it is, but we know it's alive.
Interesting. Then I will be there presently.
Very good. And I should mention your sister Aspen was taken into custody. She asked to see you. I'll let you deal with that however you'd like. If you want to speak to her, just let Commander Risu know and he'll arrange it.
Understood. Thank you for keeping me in the loop.
And remember, Kaluna, my door is always open if you need to talk about anything.
Of course, I appreciate the sentiment.
And he cuts open his comm, or he cuts it off, and the screen goes dark.